It had been hundreds of years since Xilian finally felt such chills down his spine. Mei Nianqing said White No Face was standing right before him. Xilian's first thought was it was himself, but he had forgotten. Before Mei Nianqing, other than Xilian, there was still Jun Wu behind him. Only, he had never suspected that person, so this was a startling revelation, which was why all of his hairs were now standing on end. Xilian struggled a bit, but the strength of that hand was extremely powerful, gripping him firmly without budging. He said, in spite of himself, your face. Jun Wu's voice sounded like he didn't pay it any mind, like he had only just noticed a trifling mistake. Ah, a moment's carelessness, and they've come out again. Another wave of excruciating pain shot up from Xilian's wrist. Finally, he couldn't grip the hilt anymore and loosened his fingers. The long sword dropped to the ground, and clang, a crisp, resounding sound filled the hall. However, it was too late. Many of the heavenly officials nearby, like Xilian, had seen that horrifying face reflected in Hongjing. A blanket of dead silence covered the great hall. Almost every heavenly official was stunned, including Feng Xin, who stood the closest and saw everything clearly. Mei Nianqing used this chance to break free of the hold and grabbed Hongjing that was on the ground, raising it up with both hands to stand it upright in front of Jun Wu. Everyone, look closely. Look at the face of this man standing right here. A number of martial gods came to their senses first. Pei Ming rushed forward and shouted, his sword pulled out. Who are you? The heavenly officials standing further away didn't understand what was happening, and they started crying out. What's going on? Who is General Pei talking to? How can he point a sword at the Emperor? Mei Nianqing stared intensely at Jun Wu without blinking, enunciating each word. He is White No Face. Mu Qing was dumbstruck. How could he be White No Face? Is White No Face impersonating the Emperor? Then where's the real Emperor? Xilian was now also wondering if there was an underhanded switchover. But since when had the substitute been around? How come he didn't notice anything amiss? The heavenly martial emperor wasn't like the elusive, low-key Earthmaster. No matter what, if he was impersonated, it couldn't have gone unnoticed by all in the upper court. Mei Nianqing was just about to speak again when Jun Wu raised another hand, sighing. You've disappointed me again. Mei Nianqing's face suddenly dropped, and it appeared as if he was suddenly strangled in a chokehold by someone. Lang Chenchou picked up his long sword and slashed out whooshing sword gales. But Jun Wu turned his head and swept a look, and Lang Chenchou was sent flying back. The next second, Pei Ming, Lang Chenchou, Feng Xin, Mu Qing, Chuan Yizhen, and almost all the martial gods inside the great martial hall all sieged forward. However, only an incensed time after, Jun Wu's hand was still gripping Xilian's wrist, while all the martial gods that had surrounded and attacked earlier had fallen. Within the great hall, the ground was sprawled with martial gods who had all lost their attacking powers. Only Jun Wu and Xilian remained standing. Mu Qing threw up a mouthful of blood and yelled angrily at Xilian, who was frozen on the spot and silent. Move! Do something! What are you zoning out for? Waiting to be killed? Yet little did he know, it wasn't that Xilian didn't want to move. It was that he couldn't move at all. Even though Jun Wu was using only one hand to grip him, Xilian could sense that even if he was to slightly curve a finger, the other would notice and immediately snap said finger. So never mind retaliation. From whichever angle he judged, the best decision was to remain still and cautious. Such was the power of the number one martial god of all three realms. The heavenly officials standing at the outer edges had scattered in fear. It took a moment before they remembered to escape, rushing out of the great martial hall with their faces pale. They only made it to the entrance before that set of heavy, glamorous doors closed shut on their own. They slapped at the doors futilely. The near 100 heavenly officials within the hall also couldn't get out or couldn't get up. Truly pure chaos. As for Mei Nianqing, his body was yanked forward by an unseen force, and Jun Wu grabbed hold of his collar, smiling. Did you think that, by changing your mind last minute and opening your mouth in front of everyone, I wouldn't be able to do anything? Did you think that once they knew, they could threaten me by uniting together? I can annihilate all of them with just one hand. It seemed that Jun Wu bringing Mei Nianqing up first wasn't simply to allow Xilian to bid farewell to Hua Cheng. He had threatened Mei Nianqing with something, which was why Guo allowed himself to be interrogated in the hall without resistance or complaint. Who knew that, at the last second, Mei Nianqing would go back on his word? He clutched Jun Wu's sleeves and shouted to Xilian, "Your Highness, run away! He's gone crazy!" "Guo Shi!" Xilian exclaimed. The next second, Mei Nianqing couldn't speak any longer, like something was choking his throat. But he was always dressed in robes that covered his neck, so Xilian couldn't see clearly what was wrong with it. Jun Wu sighed. "You dummy. What you're doing is no different than pushing them into a fire pit. Originally, this affair had nothing to do with them. But now, no one shall leave the heavenly capital alive." With things this urgent, Xilian immediately called through the spiritual communication, "Sanlang, Sanlang." He had never taken the initiative to recite Hua Cheng's verbal password to the communication array before, but under such dire circumstances, he didn't have the time to worry about being shy. Yet even after reciting it a few times, it was still complete silence on the other end, without any response. This feeling of communication blockage was exactly the same as it was in Mount Tonglu. With but a glance, Jun Wu could tell what he was thinking. No need to keep trying. If I do not permit it, then you cannot communicate. The heavenly court was built on Jun Wu's power. This place was his domain. He was top dog, so of course he could do whatever he wanted. Which also meant that the entire upper court, the entire heavenly capital, was not thoroughly isolated from everywhere else. This had truly become crying for the heavens in vain, crying for the earth to no avail. Suddenly, the doors to the great martial hall burst open. The heavenly officials all regained their spirits and were about to rejoice, yet when they saw who was standing at the entrance, they were all taken aback. Outside the hall stood a tall, black-clad man, his aura chilling and unapproachable, blocking everyone's way out. It was Ling Wen, wearing the brocade immortal. The heavenly officials were all at a loss on what to do, as Ling Wen crossed over the threshold and entered the hall, bending one knee to the ground toward Jun Wu. Speaking with solemn respect, she said, "My lord." "Rise and get to work," Jun Wu said. "You know what to do." Ling Wen inclined her head and smiled. Of course. Wu Qing struggled to stand, using the wall as support, and seeing this, he was both shocked and dubious. Wasn't Ling Wen still at large in Mount Tonglu? "That's correct," Jun Wu replied. "However, I feel Ling Wen is very useful and only made an insignificant mistake, so I've summoned him back." Indeed, compared to the white-clothed calamity, the brocade immortal that Ling Wen created really was an insignificant mistake. And now, both Ling Wen and the brocade immortal had become this Jun Wu's subordinates. Just then, a bundle of white shadow flashed, and something leapt in, latching onto Jun Wu's foot. It started nuzzling his boot. Feng Xin looked and cried angrily, "What are you doing? Get back here!" That thing was a fetus spirit. Not only did it not obey the words of its own father, it had even started snaking its tongue out maliciously at him. Feng Xin had just been beaten to the ground by Jun Wu and was puking blood. Yet now his own son was hugging the leg of the enemy who had wounded him. Like it had no idea who its dad was. Feng Xin was so enraged he puked another round of blood. Soon after, a troop of expressionless martial guards came pouring into the hall. Those martial guards were all officials that Jun Wu had appointed, and who had only ever obeyed his command. Ling Wen received Jun Wu's control of them and ordered, "Take every heavenly official back to their own palace and watch over them." Pei Ming was sitting nearby, his expression complicated. "Ling Wen, how heartless of you." Ling Wen patted his shoulder. "Didn't you know of my heartlessness from the day we first met? How about it? Wanna join? You're always welcome." Pei Ming gave a dry chuckle but didn't speak. Once again, Xie received special treatment, and it was Jun Wu who would personally escort him back to the palace of Xinle. Jun Wu chided, "Come." Xie looked back and glanced at Mei Nianqing. "Just what is going on? Who are you? What did you want to achieve? Who is this person? Is he Jun Wu or White No Face? What is he planning?" There were far too many questions he wanted to ask, but they were ones to be asked in private and very carefully. Only Mei Nianqing could answer those questions, but Jun Wu would definitely not give him this chance. The moment they crossed out of the great martial hall, Xie was slightly taken aback. Upon the great avenue of the heavenly capital, the skies were gloomy, clouds rolling nefariously. All had changed in the blink of an eye, and the once scintillating brightness was no more. Only the martial guards under Jun Wu's command still acted as they usually did, as they sent every heavenly official back to their own palace, and everything appeared uneasy and somber. As for the junior officials who had been rushing about, they were now all sprawled all over the ground, unconscious. Needless to say, this must have been Jun Wu's doing. From afar came the dang, dang, chiming of a bell. It seemed the problem lay with the bell. The two slowly walked toward the palace of Xinle along the great avenue of the heavenly capital. On the way, Xie had been spinning his mind, trying to think of a way to escape. But he was no match against Jun Wu, and any clever little tricks he could think of would be completely useless against the emperor. Besides, Jun Wu didn't just have the martial might, he could also see through what Xie was thinking. By the time they entered the palace of Xinle, Xie still hadn't come up with any ideas, and he told himself to let it go, that it'd be fine even if he couldn't think of anything. If he didn't communicate with Hua Cheng for too long, Hua Cheng would definitely notice something wrong, as long as things didn't get out of hand before that happened. However, after the doors were shut, Jun Wu suddenly said, "Do you miss Crimson Rain's sword flower?" Jun Wu's words made his heart jump to his throat, and his heart started pounding. Xilian didn't know how to respond. If he said yes, would Jun Wu do something to Hua Cheng? And if he said no, Jun Wu might not believe him. Hearing no response, Jun Wu smiled. "No need to worry. I know you must miss him. I'm sure you really want to communicate with him." The way he spoke to Xilian was still the same as before. Warm, tolerant, composed, dependable. There were no changes. But the more he was like this, the more Xilian was confused and terrified. Then Jun Wu continued, "If you really miss him, then why don't you connect with him for a bit and chat?" Xilian was speechless. Jun Wu had guessed what Xilian was thinking when they entered the doors just now. Everything was within his grasp. Jun Wu continued smiling. "Shenle, you know what to say. Don't let him be worried. I'm sure that Crimson Rain sword flower of yours would be very happy that you're connecting with him as well." Then he placed a hand on Xilian's shoulder. Xilian felt an intricate wave of movement and knew that Jun Wu had cast some sort of spell that allowed him to hear the content of their communication. Even if Jun Wu wouldn't be able to speak, he could still hear. Naturally, Xilian knew what Jun Wu wanted to hear him say. After a pause, he gathered his courage and bold-headedly said Hua Cheng's verbal password out loud. Having heard that verbal password, Jun Wu seemed to have found it funny and chuckled a bit. However, Xilian had no time to be embarrassed or shy. It took only a breath of a second before Hua Cheng's voice rang next to Xilian's ears. He sighed. "Gaga, gaga, it's been so long. You finally remembered Sanlang." Xilian exchanged a look with Jun Wu. He replied, "Sanlang, I haven't even left for 2 hours." However, Hua Cheng said, "To me, the point is that you left, not only 2 hours. Even for an instant, it's still separation." Jun Wu was listening right next to him. Even with the situation so precious right now, Xilian still managed to feel some genuine embarrassment. Jun Wu said, "Unfortunately, he will have to wait longer than 2 hours. Continue. Tell him that until the resentful spirits have been taken care of, he will not be able to see you. Don't give any hints in a roundabout way. I can hear everything." To finish taking care of resentful spirits, that'd be 7 days and 7 nights. After a pause, Xilian said, "If you can't even wait for 2 hours, what will you do if I need to be away longer this time?" "Did Jun Wu stuff you with a big pile of missions?" Hua Cheng asked. "Yeah," Xilian replied. "Let me help you," Hua Cheng said. Jun Wu said, "Tell him that after you complete the mission, I will permit you to take a 3-year break." Xilian said, "There's no need. Sanlang, you're already a great help guarding that array for me, so just let me handle everything else. The Emperor already said that after I complete this big pile of missions, I can have a 3-year break. I won't have to do anything." "Only 3 years?" Hua Cheng asked. "Is 3 years not enough?" Xilian said. "It's already a perk." "All right, fine. But," Hua Cheng said languidly. Gege, that's your perk. What about mine?